You know, there's a lot of great OU podcasts, but there's only one where the horns are always down. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Horns Down Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, another episode of the Horns Down Podcast. We got another edition of this. We're gonna do a little player focus, talk about some recruiting, talk about some other stuff if we get a chance. I got my guy Jay from Unfair Sports, Locked On Sooners contributor, all the above. We got Barry that's gonna fall in line here soon, so everybody just get in and fit in. Of course, like, subscribe, do all those different things, share all these videos or whatever. Growing the channel, doing all the rest of those things. But hey, shout out to everybody for all the love and support. So that being said, we'll get to some of our topics that we talked about here in a second. Jay, let's just put this out there on the radar, okay? Because tonight I'm gonna preface this conversation. We're gonna talk about Peyton Bowen, okay, and the safety room. So if you guys got any questions, anything like that, put that in the chat, and we'll definitely look at them and talk to you guys. But when I'm prefacing this, I want to say this right here. I am upset with a lot of my friends in this industry, right? I'm upset with a lot of my friends that do this podcast because a lot of y'all, maybe I'm grouping you in there, maybe I shouldn't be, but a lot of y'all give Caleb Downs all of this credit. Y'all put him on a pedestal. And I think to myself, why isn't Peyton Bowen talked in the same light? I don't know, but I just want to preface this conversation by saying, look, I think the world of I think Caleb Downs is amazing, but I also think Peyton Bowen is really special as well, and I think that the best is yet to come. Was he the same once he got injured? No. Am I really trying to compare the two? I really don't know, because to me, I think they play a similar style of ball, but they both were freshmen last year, and they had highs, they had lows. But I'm just wondering, why is it the Ohio State charm? Because, Glenn Spencer, it's not easy to get pick up that defense the first year, right? I don't know. We're going to see. Same could be said about BV, but I just want to preface that and just ask that question: why? As we bring in Barry, why, Jay, is Peyton Bowen not talked about in the same light as a Caleb Downs?
First off, what up, Barry?
What's up, man?
Good to see you. On the Peyton Bowen piece, man, I think the big thing is that Alabama featured Downs immediately as soon as he got on campus. And they threw him in one of those, that strong safety, that critical position in running the Saban defense. And I think what was interesting about that was playing a true freshman is not a good idea in your first few games, especially when you have a big opponent coming up, right? They're the ones that's usually debated. Kchris, me and Ty talk about this all the time. One thing, and he totally understands where I come from with it, is I don't like watching freshmen play so early, because that's who teams start to focus on baiting. Like in that Texas game, that's basically how Texas did was they was finding ways to bait Caleb Downs, and Sarkisian was throwing over his head. Smartest thing you could possibly do, because that's how he was getting those deep passes. It's like they found ways to bait him one way or another. And it's not that Downs is bad. It's just that he's young. He's still got to learn experience, especially when you get to really complex offenses. You got to get the experience to do good. With Peyton Bowen, what you see with Venables is he's infamous for having one of the more complex defenses in college football, to the point where it confuses the quarterbacks they're playing against, and sometimes confuses the even players that are on the roster. And so you're hearing more about Caleb because Caleb started the entire time for the Alabama defense and started to shine as the season progressed. And Peyton kind of came in and out, but then Peyton also got hurt. He had an injury. When he had that injury, you started to see his snaps go down, because it makes no sense to play a player like him when he's injured, physically injured, not hurting, but actually injured. And, you could hinder his progress over the next couple of seasons, right? So you didn't see as much as him as you saw with the Caleb Downs. So I think that's probably why people kind of discounted what Peyton Bowen's possibly do. As a 5-star, I think that's why they kind of discounted him.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. I think a large piece of that too is the snap counts. I'd be curious to go back and see how much Downs played versus Bowen. There were a lot of games where Bowen didn't get much run or as much, and Downs did feel like a featured player. Also cases where the teams just didn't. Bowen a lot of times was not a factor because teams weren't really trying to attack that piece of the defense, and OU just they did well in games where Bowen was needed, which to me kind of goes to highlighting him as a player. And I just want to touch on some of those things. Against Texas, exceptional. Right early in the season, exceptional. He had some plays down the stretch where, I know he had some miscues. I want to say in the TU game, there were a couple plays where he could have. That was just being young. But me and Damian have talked. Plug on the Barry and Mack Show over there on OU Insider. Guys, go listen right now. Got a new podcast and video that should be up tonight over on the OU Insider page. But he was probably one of, if not the best tackler on the team, one of the faster players in that secondary, just a guy who can, such a natural mover, just so gifted in space. And we've known historically that Venables likes to spoon feed guys. He doesn't just, throw them out there into the wolves. We know that he's a big fan of development. They gave a lot of guys snaps last year. They rotated quite a bit. Some of those pieces were interchangeable. And I think Bowen this coming season, it's going to be interesting. I think as he gets more experienced, he's a guy, because of his coverage skills and because of how well he tackles, you can move him around a little bit. You can put him in different spots in order to take advantage of his gifts. Because he's and I've talked about him even as a punt returner. I think if they end up going that route, which it sounded somewhat like from spring that he was getting some run there, I think he could be one of the great punt returners in OU history. I think he is one of the guys who he has such a natural feel of space in those close area situations. He showcased it in high school. Just stuff. He does stuff. He's a step ahead. Very, I don't want to say Antonio Perkins-like, but he does some things in space where the way he can fill distance, his ability to accelerate is just second to none. Man, I think he's going to end up being by the time he is a junior, senior year, hopefully he's a guy who maybe he stays all four. You never know. But hopefully he does. I think he is an all-SEC, all-American level player. And I think anything less than that to me would be not achieving expectations and not hitting what you are as a five-star.
So let me, because you said something in there talking about how interchangeable those guys were last year. So that begs the question here. Obviously, your top three. I'm going to go on a limb and say your top four. Now, Jay probably is going to disagree with me on this, but I would say you got Peyton Bowen, you got Billy Bowman. Excuse me, let me put that in reverse. Billy Bowman, right? You got Peyton Bowen, then you got RSJ, right? And then, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I like the Hardy kid a lot. I like Hardy a lot.
I do too.
But you're probably
one of my favorite guys in the spring game.
You're probably looking at Woody going back there at safety. So the question is right now. So let's just simplify this equation, right? We know Billy's going to be starting.
Yeah,
right.
Who starts next to him? And obviously, I think you go straight to RSJ and Peyton Bowen. And I say this. Keep in mind, if Zach Alley has anything to do with this defense this year, he will run 3 safety looks. So keep that in mind. So I think those 3 will be on the field. Maybe you see one of those freshmen back there. But I mean, that's the question. Jay, we'll go to you. Who starts next to Billy Bowman?
Yeah. So first, I want to answer Barry's question here on snaps. So Caleb Downs had 890 total snaps last season. Peyton Bowen had 363.
There you go.
It's a massive gap and
Huge.
a massive gap as well as a massive amount of data you've got on what Caleb Downs was doing. Like grade wise, dude was grading in the upper 80s in coverage, right? So that's kind of leads back to the conversation why Caleb Downs himself was so popular. Now, as far as starting, you're throwing Bowman out there probably with Robert Spears Jennings, and I'm gonna throw a wrench into this. I would probably start Robert Spears Jennings with Peyton Bowen and rotate Billy in. I say that because as you mentioned, Allie will run a lot of 3 high safety, right? You're going to have somebody in the free safety middle position, which potentially could be either Peyton Bowen or Robert Spears Jennings, mainly because there's a good chance that you're going to have Peyton Bowen doing some blitzing too, right? He's a very effective blitzer. We watched him block 2 punts last season, so there's a good chance that he can go in, and he's gonna be able to get to the quarterback, right? So you can mix things up with that, but to me there's a good chance you throw Peyton out there with Robert Spears Jennings, you rotate Billy in, and you leverage him mainly in your bigger games when you need him the most, because he's basically prepping for the league at this point, right? His grade's his grade, and as long as he continue to do what he does for the time he plays out there, which they're probably going to rotate a lot of people, I think it'd probably be better to give Peyton Bowen an opportunity to get some starts in, get his feet for real wet before the 25 season, when everyone feels like that's the year that Oklahoma really going to contend. You do that, man, sky's the limit. And then you talk about freshmen to add in there, like Hardy, one of my favorites, Reggie Powers, the third, dog. God. He was on 3, just dropped their top 10 safeties.
Yeah.
From
Oh,
man.
Get your screenshots, yeah. Get y'all screenshots.
Hey, here you go.
Oh man, that's crazy. Come back, Jay, whenever you
hopefully we get him back on. Man, I'll kind of pick up on that what he said. I think he's on to something regarding Billy. You know, what we talked about it on the pod a year ago. For all of the success that Billy has had, last year he had some struggles in some games. It goes to, it was a share the load kind of deal, because Key Lawrence also had some big busts and whatnot. And for every highlight play that Billy had, there was a handful of snaps where he either took a bad angle, wasn't where he needed to be in coverage. There was something, which is why I think part of why he came back. I think there is something for him to gain, getting a year of SEC run. You know, what do you look like against big time competition? You're betting on yourself a little bit. You know, you don't want to go out there and become a player who's undraftable. And I don't think he's at all in that category, because I think the measurables that he has are going to keep him in that range. But I think Peyton Bowen is as gifted as they come. And I could easily see him starting. And also, kind of as Jay said, I could see it being a game-by-game thing, right? Where the DMAC talks about this a lot, and all of the historically good OU teams say this. It might have depended on how practice went that week. You know, was Brandon Everidge, JT Thatcher, Roy Williams, was there that much separation outside of Roy in that 2001 year, right? Brandon Everidge was a guy who could come off the bench, quote unquote, you know, and be an absolute killer, right? And Peyton Bowen, you want that depth. You want to be able to roll out, as Jay talked about, the 3 safety look. I saw a comment in there. They might not do that in the SEC. I think in the SEC, that with the ability to have guys who can also play coverage like Bowen, running a 3 safety look out there when you've got Powers possibly playing center field and you got a Billy playing up at the line of scrimmage, I think you could do a lot of cool things with that. And the SEC throws the ball around. This is not, you know, big boy, old school.
It's not your grandfather's SEC.
No, Ole Miss is throwing it around. You got Mississippi State's going to be throwing it all over the place with Lebby. You know, they're bringing what Lebby just ran this past year into the SEC, right? Alabama's been running a version of that. All these teams are. The only team still playing football like that is Georgia. They're the only team that still says we're going to go, 8 or 9 guys across the front, and we're going to try and, drive the ball down your throat. And even they have been forced to pass. And you saw when they didn't have a guy like Bennett who had that escape ability, the ability to really sling the rock into all these different places, that they struggle. But, man, I think Hardy will be a factor. Reggie Powers will probably be the guy of the new incoming players who gets the most run in the back half of that secondary. Woody is interesting. I like that you brought up Woody only because his future in the NFL is not as a cornerback. If he wants to play in the league, he is likely a nickel, strong safety kind of player. He doesn't have the prerequisite coverage skills, and we'll see how he tests out when all that comes, but he doesn't have those skills to play in space like a Gentry does.
That's the see, and we're gonna circle right back to Peyton Bowen, because I got my next question for the panel. But if you don't mind, I'm definitely gonna go to Jay on this one, because that's what I'm not understanding. Be wise, and I'm not understanding that, Barry, because you say Woody, you feel like lockdown. Ain't nobody throwing on Woody's side. Now, they did a little bit towards the end of the season last year, but you're not throwing at Woody. I mean, obviously, we know the potential. He has superstar written all over him. Gentry Williams does. Just got to stay on the field. That's the main thing with Gentry. Gentry is a superstar. Gentry is a first-round pick at corner.
Man.
Can't tell me any differently. Got to be able to stay healthy. But as I go to Jay and Barry, we'll go back to you for another comment on that. But why are we saying that about Woody? I mean, I know we're going to talk about the whole safety room, so let's go ahead and get it out. Why are we talking about Woody in that light? Because I feel like he's one of the better corners going into more underrated corners going into the SEC.
He is, and the other thing is, I think the one thing he realized about his game is that playing a little bit more, playing more positions, a little nickel, more safety will do nothing but help his draft stock, right? And I agree. Last season, man, they started the season off throwing at Gentry Williams because nobody wanted to mess with Woody, and then Gentry taught him a lesson. They're like, oh, shoot, we're going to go ahead and just throw it back towards Woody instead. I'd rather Woody than throwing it to Gentry. But as you mentioned, the bigger thing for Gentry is staying on the field. Woody has an opportunity of being a really dominant, like, rover out there. I guess that's probably the best word, for lack of better terms. Someone that just moves around on there and basically confuse defenses. They have no clue what he's going to be doing there, but he's at a random spot on the field. That's one of those things that's really going to help probably this defense with execution. But at the same time, you've got all these dudes that's got experience in a Brent Venables defense run by a guy that everybody calls Venables Light. Like, seriously, Zach Alley, I went to the camps, and Zach Alley was giving a speech, and I'm looking at James Jackson from 247. Me and him just chit-chatting, and I turn and look, and I'm like, wait, that's not Brent Venables. And he literally sounded, cadence, tone, and he had just a little bit of rasp to where you're just like, wait, is that the same dude?
That's funny.
Like, for real. But then you look at me like, no, that's a different dude. And you're going to see that defensively. It's going to be the same defense that we've seen probably close to the Clemson days. Because remember, that's when Allie, he cut his teeth at Clemson as an assistant to BV and that staff. So Woody's going to be able to do a lot of moving around and help with confusion. And because he knows the defense, and he probably knows everything in the defensive backfield as far as the secondary goes, he's going to make it fun with the different packages they're going to be able to put together. I think that they're going to be a ton of exotic looks that is truly going to be there to confuse the heck out of the opposition. And you can do it because you got the experienced guys to actually execute on it.
Barry?
Yeah, I agree. And let me also say, it's not that I don't think Woody can play corner in college at an elite level. Obviously he can. I'm just saying, for him to last in the NFL, he's not going to be able to deal with a Cooper Kupp in space, a CD, who's a guy who potentially is playing opposite a guy like that. You're not going to deal with even some of the more kind of average, smaller guys. He just has shown that unless his quickness and his ability to break on the ball and just length that he doesn't have, unless that drastically takes a jump this year, that's not his game. His game is when he knows where he needs to be, and like some of the concepts where he can give himself a little bit of cushion, watch the quarterback, be able to kind of play with his intelligence, play with his IQ, play with that knowledge of the defense. He's good. He's all world. He is a second team, fringe first team, all SEC guy, with the right other players around him. I don't think you could put Gentry on any team in college football, and as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be one of the top corners on any team you put him on. He's a guy who just has the gifts that a guy like Woody playing opposite just does not have. And he has length and quickness that the guys coming in, even a guy like Kenai Walker, man, Kenai really, to me, showed something in the spring game. He's a player who probably just needed to maybe improve some of the habits, get his strength up a little bit. He's a guy who just something was missing, which is why he couldn't stay on the field consistently. But he has length and athleticism that you cannot teach, that Woody is never going to walk out onto the field and have. And the talent gap at that position is not where it used to be. When Woody was starting initially, I mean, the drop from Woody to the next guy, whoever that was pretty substantial, right? You saw it in the LSU game in 2019. He comes in and plays a few plays, and he looks like the best defender on the field for a little bit. So at the very least he could stay with a guy. Yeah. But now that the talent gap is not the same, guys are equal and or better. A Gentry is going to outdo him in the 5-10-5. He's probably got him. Eldrill, he's probably got him. He's probably going to be faster than Woody. So, which is why Woody is not playing in space like these other guys are. Right?
I hear you.
Peyton Bowen, a Gentry. So that's my take. It's not that he won't succeed in college and he won't succeed this first year in the SEC. I just don't think, and I don't think that is his future in the NFL. I also think that Venables and the staff might play to that a little bit and say, let's give you some looks at these different spots and also just see what it does to the defense.
Mm-hmm. So valid point. So let's circle right back to Peyton Bowen, and it doesn't matter who goes first. But I guess, the real question with Peyton is, what does he have to do to take that next step to get to that, all SEC first team defense or all American status that we all believe that he can get to, he can and will get to, right? What is the next step for him?
No, I'll take this. I think he's got to get stronger, which probably happened over the offseason. There were still times where he got pushed around. He is a fantastic tackler, and his technique in the open field is so good. He's a guy who just has such a good feel for angles. There was a play that I highlighted last year where he did things. He basically gave himself an advantage that didn't exist by how he took the angle, and the angle allowed him to make the tackle. He's a guy who just has such a good feel for where he needs to get to bring down the player with the ball, which sounds so simple, but you need 11 guys who can do that, and he's at least one of them and probably one of the better ones at that. I think his recognition had to get a little better. The TU game, a lot of that was him just struggling with some of the zone concepts that they were putting out there. He wasn't getting where he needed to be in time, wasn't maybe playing physical enough, which is also something that just comes with being more experienced, being more seasoned, seeing more game reps, more practice reps, more reps with good on good, that physicality that you have to get to be elite at that position. To me, that was one of Stutzman's biggest jumps, and one of the reasons he was so much better this past year was just he ratcheted up that level of physicality. He thickened up the frame a little bit, and he was able to see the jump in performance. I think Peyton, as long as he stays on the trajectory he is, which learn and know the defense inside and out, be a leader from your performance on the field, and set the tone, and actually be a guy who knows the playbook so well that you're able to now leverage that in the game. So your athleticism is not just plus, your athleticism that you bring to the table is plus, because you're dominating teams now. Like, he's a guy who I believe can dominate a game the way Tyrann Mathieu dominated a game. I think he is that good when the ball is in the air. I think he is that good once he has the ball in his hands. Or if you remember Tyrann Mathieu when he was at LSU, you had to account for him scoring points as a secondary player, right? He was good felt like a touchdown a game without things going right. So I think Bowen has the potential to do that. It just comes down to, what is his buy-in on learning the defense? Did he get stronger this offseason? Because I think the other stuff is there. His ability to break on the ball, his feel for space, his feel for stripping at the ball, his timing when the ball is in the air for interceptions, for deflections, knockdowns. I think that stuff is good. Height may come into play at some point in his career, but I think playing safety, it's a little less of a factor than when you need that length on the perimeter. But I'd be curious what Jay thinks.
Oh, man. You just got my brain going.
Yeah. I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna let you know a little secret. Jay's an RSJ guy. That's who he is. That's his guy.
I really am.
Hey, no problem with that. No beef with that.
I am. Tulsa, baby, stand up. That is me, man. Booker T.
Hey, so RSJ hit the field, and my uncle said, "Who the hell is that?" I said, "I don't know. That's a grown man."
Have you seen him recently with the pictures they all put out?
I haven't seen him recently, but at the spring game, I was like,
Barry, tell him, man. Barry, tell him.
He looks good, man. He looks good. He's getting after it, man. No, I'm an RSJ guy too. I like RSJ. I think both of them, hot take, I think both of them are higher ceiling players than Billy. Maybe that's not a hot take.
I can see it. I don't think that's a very hot take at all. I think Billy is what he is, and I think Billy's really good. That's the thing. But I think Billy should have been a finalist for the Thorpe, right? Billy likes to also get the big hit, and he has a tendency of missing tackles, in which we've seen that a few times. Actually, who was that? Iowa State. We watched him pull up and almost level a dude, but he pulled up because he thought he was going to hit his teammate, and then the dude caught it and was gone. He's like, oh, dog. Take his head off, man. Get a personal foul if you need to, which I expect us to do that this season. But no, kind of with the question, man, a healthy RSJ and a healthy Gentry Williams really sets a major tone for the secondary. Really does. But that's the thing, though, right? And that's the thing, like you said, Chris. You gotta be healthy, right? Right. The best ability is availability in a lot of situations. Good thing is we've got some competitive depth, so we're good on that part.
Yeah, man, I ain't got
one. But to go with that, you gotta be healthy, and you want your best players playing. So I'm still leaning with the RSJ. If not Bowen, then Billy with your start.
Is this? And this could be a yes or no, or you can, give just a little brief and we'll move on. Is this the best OU secondary? I know the Riley years. I know people are going to burn that one up too.
Oh, of course.
But is this the best on paper right now? Because we haven't seen it as a product, right? We've seen it last year, which it was way better than what it's been ever, right? In a while. Is this the best secondary that we've had? And you probably umpteen years.
You probably go back to what? Derek Strait, that era, maybe Zach Sanchez era?
Man, I think 2015 was pretty solid.
Yeah.
2015 was solid. What was 16? That was the Jordan Evans defense. That one had some struggles. Now I think 15. You had Sand. Really, I think you have to go back probably to Tony Jefferson for just talent,
right?
Just NFL guys, because none of those guys in 2015 that I can think of were just right off the top of the head NFL level players. You guys might look it up.
Yeah, I'm looking. You had what? See, that was Zach. 15 was Zach Sanchez, right?
Yeah, 15 was who was playing opposite him at 15?
Who was his counterpart?
Was that Will Johnson or am I?
That's the random name of the day.
I think it was Will. I think you may be right.
And the safety would have been. And Will was a good player.
Yeah,
he just got kind of phased out because they brought in some other guys a little longer.
Trying to think who else was floating out.
Was Trey Brown a freshman in 15?
So you had Ahmad Thomas as well.
Ahmad Thomas. That was really one of his better. He definitely had an uptick that year. He played a lot better than in 14. 15 was his last. Oh, and Stephen Parker. No. Was that Stephen Parker? Stephen Parker was on that team.
He was.
Yes, he was. Parker was. Parker was 13
probably
starts.
Then 15. I would say Stephen Parker, Thomas, Sanchez. That was a pretty good secondary. But you list those names off, are any of those guys, first round Gentry Williams level? Are any of Peyton Bowen? Is there a Peyton Bowen in that secondary? So I think you got to go to 11, 12 with Tony Jefferson before you had guys like that.
I just feel, if I just had a last word, I'd just say, man, I feel really good about his defense as a whole, man. I think it's going to be our strong point until we can see exactly what Jackson is going to do this year, which I think that quarterback room is I think it's criminally underrated, simply because you have the veteran in there who could come out there and probably play if called upon with Casey Thompson. You got a kid that a lot of people are excited about, and I think that they would actually let him come out there and rip it as well, instead of just trying to focus on using his athleticism and Michael Hawkins. But I think Jackson Norwell is going to take over, and I think he's going to take over in a big way. So I'm excited about this defense. I'm excited about the secondary as well. One guy that we didn't talk about, Kendall freaking Dobie. I think that he's going to excel in that cheater role. I think that you're a lot of times you may not have to run that 3 safety look, because I think that especially going man and all the rest of that stuff, or as well as zone, I think this would be the year where you could play zone better. I think guys will get it. But what I'm trying to say is this right here, is that you got cover guys all over the field. And that's going to be the scary part, where you could put length on the outside with Des Malone, Kanai Walker, right, as your corners, or Vickers as well, to get physical, get bigger guys out there. But then as well, you got Peyton Bowen, RSJ, and a Billy Bowman just roaming back there. And the fact that you'll have Dobie roaming as well, and we all know what his ball skills are. I think he's a ball hawk. So that being said, man, I think it could prove. I think at some points in during the season, especially if everything is clicking, they're getting their plays in, as early as they possibly can, because BV likes to call stuff late. But if they can get stuff situated, get all their alignments, all the rest of that stuff, I think it's going to be scary. And it's a lot of defenses. I mean, for a lot of offenses out there who are, some of the quarterbacks are not going to be ready for what's disguised out there, right? So it's going to be really interesting. So I think you're going to be I think this is the year where you can truly say you're going to be able to be very, very multiple on defense. So you will see a lot of different looks, and from drive to drive, game to game, whatever the case may be. So I'm excited about the secondary. I think these two gentlemen on here are as well. So people, we're going to keep it moving. We're going to keep it going all the way to some recruiting. Woo. Hit me up and said, hey, we got to talk OU recruiting. I said, say less. So Barry, we got Marcus Harris. We got CJ Nixon. Just got a commitment from 25, well, a PWO, but Sutton, right?
Oh yeah, I saw
Yep.
that.
Jay was talking to me a little bit about that in the green room about, hey, there's potential there. There's some upside there, right? So go ahead, just tell us, just go. I mean, tell us what you want to say about recruiting.
Man, it's good. Yeah, I can say that. To me, I said this over there on X, and I love the Loud OU Insider platform is really cool. Just a quick little plug for those guys, but Manny Choice. To me, one of the cool stories was about him being offered by Oklahoma so early, and the fact they got that offer probably mattered a little bit. But he is a guy who, at the receiver position, is OU just not absolutely stacking players year after year right now. We talked about this on our last episode. Jaquez Petaway feels like that was years ago at this point. And he's a guy who, with this blend of talent, as things go, is he a potential portal guy down the stretch? Like, because they are bringing in, so you got Zion Kearney, right? You got Burks, who's going to be playing this year. You have guys who just such elite, high-level potential. You bring in Choice, who is listed. I saw some services had him at 6'4". One had him at 6'5". He's not that tall, but probably at the very least a solid 6'2.5", 6'3" for sure, and moves like a small guy. He's great off the line of scrimmage. He can run past guys. He's a player who has the flexibility to play a lot of different spots as a receiver. You can move him in different ways. But the one guy who I probably want to touch on, who's probably the biggest, and I won't say name. I think Choice is a pretty big name, but man, getting Jaden O'Neal. If there is ever a player who you look at and say, by the time he is coming out as a senior, he's going to be a top 5 prospect and a 5-star talent, it is him. Man, as he develops, he's still got a little bit of baby fat on his frame. He's still, looking to round that body into shape. But you talk about a player who already, so being a 26 guy, looks the part. Like, man, his throwing mechanics just absolutely pristine for a guy his age. He has such a good feel for ball placement. His velocity on the ball is so good. To get a commitment from a guy like that so early, who I think is going to rise up the ranks, is massive. And you also touched on Marcus Harris. Again, another, and I'll kind of round all these into form, a guy who fits the mold, the archetype of being a guy, a slot type player who's a really good route runner. He's more quick than fast. He's a player who has great hands, a great knack in the red zone for catching the ball, who's not a big guy, actually a smaller guy, about 5'11", but he's a player who has such a good knack of getting open. He is footwork wise, and being a modern day player, he's playing against really talented players. He is very polished, more polished than Choice when it comes to some of the footwork at the line of scrimmage, playing against bump, knowing what to do with his hands, all of the little detailed things that you want out of a receiver when you get to the college game. And at the end of and then you had, Nixon as one of the more recent commitments, who was just lengthy, could be a phenomenal pass rusher for Oklahoma. He's a guy who you did not want to let leave the state. I mean, at the end of the day, OU has gotten so good with evaluating guys and really nailing down not just who is the 5-star, who is the top guy in the country, but who fits what we want to do, who fits the mold for that position that we need at that spot, and having very specific attributes you're looking for, man. And OU just continues to do it. And then just being able to close on these guys and get commitments. I don't think – I said this 2 or 3 podcasts ago on the show. If this season goes well for Oklahoma and let's say they get to an SEC championship or make a nice little playoff run, with Venable's ability and the staff to analyze talent wearing that SEC patch. I'm not saying they're going to go run off, 5 national championships or whatever like Saban has, but OU has the potential with the talent uptick and what's on the roster and what could be on the roster to have a nice little run in them that I think is very, very possible if you get this defense to where I think it can be with the players they got on that team right now.
Last Sunday on Jay's podcast, I said, hey, people, one thing that we are that we're forgetting is that we have been unconditioned to not be conditioned to what was OU years and years and years ago, which was a powerhouse, a place where competitive depth was honestly not even really a term. It was a second thought, right? Because and it's not just a Raleigh thing. It happened with just, some lethargic recruiting, terms and stuff like that. But fact of the matter is simply this right here, is that what's happening at Georgia and what's happening at Bama and all those places being factories, that's what OU has always been, right? And every team, every program is going to go through a dud phase, right? And so we're finally getting back to that, and it's hard for people to realize, like, man, it's not NIL. Put that to the side. Push that to the side. This is what football is about. People are going to portal out regardless.
Yep.
Everybody's looking to get on the field. So one more thing I'll say this before I pass it off to Jay. Me and my uncle were talking about Marcus Harris, and I said, watching him, he kind of reminds you of like a Farouk in a sense, like not really flashy, but he will make some plays that make you go, ooh, and the footwork is there. He just looks like a wide receiver. My uncle said, he's like, man, looking around, reading some boards, and just from my thoughts, he said Joaquin Iglesias. He said
that's what D-Mac said on the podcast.
Yeah, he said that's the name that's being thrown out there an awful lot. And
that's who D-Mac said.
That's not bad at all. That's not bad at all. If you be a Joaquin Iglesias.
Right, who wouldn't want another Joaquin Iglesias? He was killing it for us for years, right? He was always consistent too. Like, that's the big thing with Marcus Harris is his hands, man. He's one of the top catchers out there as far as recruits go, and he has a very big catch radius, even at what 6.5 ish. He has a wide radius. I think between him and Elijah Thomas, man, that's a nasty set of receivers that's just going to cook people on a regular basis, right? Mm-hmm. Then you're throwing in Manny Choice, which gives you more size. He really reminds me of when we got Nick Anderson, right? I can go further back to other players, but he makes me think of Nick. 3-star, not too people looked at, just can catch, and is a lot faster than you think because he also does track. Manny was huge, right? So you add, that's what 4 receivers with Grayson Harris as well in this. You got a pretty big wide receiver class. So honestly, to me, seeing that and then the potential of picking up a Cortez Mills, trying to add that 5th one, it makes me feel like Emmett Jones is like, hey, I expect 4 of my receivers gone at minimum, right? Farouk's gone because he's going to be gone regardless. He has no choice. I bet you they expect Burks to get drafted early, so he's going to bounce. Yeah. They're probably going to say Nick Anderson's going to get drafted early because of how good he did last year. They're going to accelerate that, get him gone again this year, and maybe a sleeper bounces with him. If he has a show-out season, there's a chance a day 2 grade could end up Jane Gibson at his size. Yeah. You never know, right? Or Andrew Anthony, depends on when he comes back from being healthy.
Anthony, I think he's gone. If he has a really good year, I think he's out.
I anticipate Anthony being back next year only because he's not expected to return until Tennessee, right? He returns SEC play. Now, granted, if he shows out SEC play, it's a different story. The man's gone. We can't do anything about that, right? Yeah. Like you said, if he has a good year, he's probably going to end up with a day 2 grade as well, and he's probably going to bounce. So I'm sensing that's the expectation, right? I'm sensing that they're thinking they're losing 3 to 4 guys in this coming draft, and if he can get 3 to 4 dudes drafted, sheesh. That's a monster job.
That's a monster.
Yeah. Jay, he's killing it. You look at too, just kind of all over the country, right? In modern day, Lancaster, handling things in state. That there have been criticisms of coaches at various positions on the staff. Some guys who are currently there who, maybe the recruiting was good, but the technical on the field stuff or whatever. Emmett Jones, to me, is one of the most important hires. We'll look back at this historically, right? 20, 25, 30 years from now, just talking about this era. And I think we'll say that was such a critical hire for Venables and what this team is and could be, especially in an era where you got to have elite wide receivers if you want to win championships.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go back to every champion. I think we did this the other day. Every single guy, defense was important, and that was absolutely a piece. But if you didn't have an elite guy catching the ball, you didn't, at least one, I'm talking truly elite NFL level guy, you weren't winning the national championship. And that's just is what it is.
That is.
No, that's true. That's true.
So Jay, talk. I need you to talk offensive line real quick, man. What's going on there?
Hey, man.
Is Peyton Bowen gonna be able to do the unbelievable? Huh?
Look, so
is he gonna be able to save the world?
I talked about this a little bit. So we all know the announcement came down that we moved everything NIL related in-house. Everything's in one place. You get the one Oklahoma, right? No more Crimson and Cream, no more this, no more that, no more Hoosie for guys and food. No more all that other random stuff. You got one place, one centralized location. I honestly believe they did that to consolidate the resources, evaluate the landscape, and say, all right, how do we take this to go get 2, if not 3, of these big name offensive linemen? Say that because last season, all of the talk was, the rumors and rumbles that Peyton Bowen was really enamored and excited about this year's crop of offensive linemen. Well, we see what these offensive linemen look like, and we see how these meetings and conversations have gone. I'm totally sensing that they want to get that stuff together to say, all right, how can we cut this pot where we can get 2 or 3 of these dudes? Right now, relationship-wise, we look really good with we got Sean Hutton, which means PWO, and one reason why, he's got offers from us, Texas, and Texas A&M, mainly because everybody knows the close relationship he has with Michael Fasusi, and he has a friendship with Lamont Rogers as well. Now, Hutton is also an OU legacy. His dad, JD, is a graduate of Oklahoma. So he's got ties. He's always been at Oklahoma, and he's always wanted to come here. He may be a little under the radar type player because everybody else is paying attention around all the people around him. You give him a PWO because you've already got your center in Hollenbeck, in Owen Hollenbeck, right? You don't need to take 2 centers. But if you can cross-train him, because he played center at Louisville, if you can cross-train him into guard and give an opportunity to play, there's a chance he can earn himself a scholarship because he could be additional depth. And if he works his butt off at 6'3", 315 right now, he could get a chance to play at the guard spot while you got Branson Hickman, you've got a Troy Everett who's hurt, who's coming back healthy, Joshua Bates, who's basically in line to take it, and Hollenbeck, who everybody's basically saying reminds them of how Creed was coming in, the wrestler, one that you don't want to mess with in the trenches. There's a good chance, man, that if these 3 dudes want to play together, you can start playing the game and figuring out how to get all of them. And then, of course, you got Andrew Babalola, who rumor has it he enjoyed his visit a lot. He's posted some stuff. He's posted some pictures. You can tell he has some enjoyment there. And, some people look at some of his recent follows, look like he's starting to follow some professors at Oklahoma. Don't know what that means, but I know that the most important thing for him is academics. So that's why it's Oklahoma and Stanford as well as Michigan all in the mix. To me, all you need to do is just go ahead and just have Walter Rouse get a young man a call and let him know, hey, I played at Stanford. I played at Oklahoma. This is kind of why I think you should go ahead and lay hands on Oklahoma. That's just me. And then for everybody else, for Fasusi and Lamont Rogers, dog, look at Tyler Guyton. Y'all some giants. Y'all some freaks. But look at what we did with Guyton coming in as a 3-star who was a defensive lineman when he went into college.
Yeah. That to me is the craziest of all of Bedenbaugh's development of guys. To me, that is, and people have pointed to different players over the years, that with how fast that took place, if we really want to talk about that, with how fast he was able to, one, just be a productive player on the field, from that to first round talent, I mean, that I would, and I've been critical of Beaton Bow at times, mainly just on the recruiting side of just hitting the high school talent and locking them down when you need to lock them down. But man, I would hang my hat on that Guyton development every freaking day of the week, man. That is one of the most impressive pieces of work I think has ever been done by a coach. Who Guyton, very long athlete, but I would say maybe even wasn't the optimal build, right? So technically he had to learn how to really play low, how to kind of fix his center of mass. He really struggled playing too high early on, and he fixed so many things in his game to the point where just an undeniable guy. And now what? OU has 14 active offensive linemen on NFL rosters right now,
Crazy.
Which half the league has an OU player starting or in there too deep on the offensive line. That is absolutely insane. So, yeah, Beaton Bow's done, especially lately, man. He's done a phenomenal job. And it just might have taken a little bit to get the ball rolling. You know, under Riley, his numbers were so low, and he had to hit on guys. You know, his last good stretch of players was when Stoops was still there. As that phased out and the numbers seemed to get a little bit tighter, OU seemed to put more of their eggs in that skill position basket. Yeah. It seemed like things got a little tighter on the O-line.
That and the fact that you didn't have Smitty.
And you didn't have Smitty. Yeah.
That was because guys like Robinson, Hayes, those guys should have never been in that position they were going into the draft. They should have been, high round guys, to be honest with you, because those guys still made rosters and stuff. But
Hayes should have been an All-American player. Had he had a guy like Schmitty getting him right year after year, I think Marquise Hayes would have been full on like one of the top guys at that position in the country. I thought he was really good in spots, but always looked slightly out of shape.
Yeah, and that's fair. That Smitty effect it's man. So last 8 minutes of the show, let's have a little fun. Let's talk about just a random topic that I think hits home for a lot of people. What is there an NCAA problem or is there a Texas problem? Right? Because what I'm trying to figure out is what the hell is going on with Texas baseball? Like, I just I don't understand. Like, are you that greedy where you got to go get a new coach? I'm like, did y'all underperform somewhere? I didn't even pay attention to baseball this year at Texas. I was like, oh, they're usually in the top 10 or whatever, and they're talking about they have the team and this and that, blah, blah, blah. Then I look up and I said, what? You got the Texas A&M coach. What? 3 Texas A&M players, their best players are in the portal. What is going on? So that begs that begs the question: is there an NCAA problem with this NIL thing still, or is this just Texas and this is what we should expect from Texas and Texas A&M? The mockery that they make of NIL and the transfer portal and the coaching searches, et cetera, et cetera.
The Texas thing was wild to me. I think my favorite part about the Texas thing was that that people actually like were trying to chastise Oklahoma fans around the Lincoln Riley situation, and then when that went down, everybody's just like, "Oh, that was just rude. He could have done that in a better way," as if there wasn't a whole press conference talk around I'm not going to LSU. Like what are we doing here, people?
Yeah,
right.
Wow. That's a good point. That's
right. Within a day of it, I'm not the next coach of LSU, and then all of a sudden he's the next coach of another team, and so people were like trying to blow that off. But that I mean, Texas needed it, right? They went and got the coach. Not only is the AD and him close, they're friends. They got the guy that went to the national championship, played against Tennessee, and lost to the real UT. Right, the real UT won the national championship in baseball. Yeah. Texas fans hear that, they're going to be mad, but at the same time, it's the truth because University of Tennessee has been around the football team longer than they've been in state. But I digress. University of Tennessee won the Natty, and they went and got the guy that was the runner-up And now the question is going to be, how many of them A&M kids going to hit that portal and follow him up there to Texas? Which, I mean, it looks like the staff is there. Now, I feel like some of them players are going to follow too. So A&M sucks to be like, a stepping stone program. That's no bueno.
And Texas fans, I know y'all love to try to come in and kill me in these comments after the show is over every episode. All I got to say, this is not me trying to throw a hit. I'm really trying to figure out what the hell is going on. How do you do that? This had to be in the works. Like, you just don't come off winning it. Hold on. Let me say, Texas A&M is the real loser. Imagine almost winning a World Series and losing and then turning around and your coach goes to the worst thing. Like, that doesn't happen.
That's crazy.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 100%. And we've known though that all this stuff is going on behind the scenes. Coaches have ways that they're reaching out and talking to these guys. This is why the NCAA, as it exists right now, has probably not got much more time. I think it is on its last leg.
Yeah.
And we're especially the Big Four conferences. I think you're moving towards a commissioner for all the big sports. You got to have something. You got to have one guy, a Goodell, a Tagliabue, a David, somebody who says, y'all can't do this mess. This can't happen anymore. Well, we got to make sure that we're abiding by the rules and actually have some rules that get punished. You lose scholarships, you lose games, you lose whatever it is, you lose practices, you lose something, right? You have it in every league except in the NCAA, where it is essentially a haves or have-nots, right? If this was, I won't say Oklahoma State because we would want the worst for them at times. But let's say like this was done by, let me pick, like Colorado State. Not that they could pull something off like this, but because it's Texas, there is a little bit of that, let's look the other way, and we're not going to mess with this. We also have fear of it's Texas, and we're the NCAA. We don't have near as much power. This is probably a battle we're going to lose. Is it worth fighting? Is it worth investigating? Is it worth all of the mud dragging we're going to receive from even trying to make this a thing? The NCAA just got to go. The NCAA is
they're absolutely,
man. It is that they are just trying to breathe. That they are in the middle of the ocean, man. Last summer I went on this trip and they took me. I went snorkeling, and we thought we were going by a cove. Now, a guy took us in the middle of the ocean. I had the most rinky-dink life jacket on, and I'm an okay swimmer. I'm not a great swimmer. And he said, you look like a pretty fit guy. You can go out there first. And I went out there first. I looked down. I said, is this a spot? He was like, oh, this is a spot. This is where we're going to snorkel. And that water was 40 feet deep. My heart sank. I couldn't see land either way around me. That is the NCAA right now. That is how they are feeling at this moment. They are in fear of drowning. So I think they are playing everything super safe, right? I mean, how many things have we seen with the portal that's like, well, that's questionable.
Yeah.
And they
don't let a guy go back home because to be with his sick mother or grandfather, but you let Justin Fields go. But I digress. Look, James Strice had to come in on the night. He said, hold on. He said Texas is permanently in a measuring contest, and they're too busy at it to win natties. Let's just be real. Last topic, folks. Stephen G, you're my guy, so I got to go in on this. I don't know why you don't include the horns down in that game. You got everything in the game. It doesn't make any sense. You got Florida and Kentucky holding up championship belts for what have they won? You've got Clemson coming out there touching the rock and running down. You got Dabo out there looking like Rudy running up and down the field. Like, come on, man. Like, what are we doing? Like, you can't have the horns down in there. Sankey didn't say, hey, nah, they can't do the horns down in the S. It's the SEC.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Sankey didn't say that. Sankey didn't have a problem with it, and it's Sankey we trust. We don't play at 11 a.m. anymore, so Sankey's good in my book. I don't care what's going on. So my problem is that you have all this money that you about to make, billion dollar video game, and you can't. That better be a part of a DLC, and I will protest until that.
It won't be. They ain't gonna do it. I mean, they ain't gonna do it.
They could have taken any intern's hand in that building. Say, hey man, can you just like do the horns and then just turn it upside down?
No.
You got. Let's be real. You probably could have Wisconsin and Minnesota over there fighting over lumberjack trophies and stuff like that as animations, and nobody is going to do a horns down. You probably got Montana and Montana State on there playing for whatever they play for, the Snow Bowl Award. I don't know. All I know is this right here is that y'all need to figure this out. This makes
it won't be. It's not. They're not gonna do it. It's not something that there's not gonna be no horns down. And it's silly. I get it. At the same time, it's like, yeah, whatever. It's gonna be trivial. The only time it really matters the most is whenever you're playing against Oklahoma. Because I mean, if anything, I guess this will be a defense to them. If anything, you put the horns down in the game, you got to put it on every single team that could possibly play Texas. Because everybody's going to do it. That's a lot of coding. So I in their defense, because if you think about it, for like Oregon, it's only going to be Oregon players that are going to do it. You know, for the U, it's only going to be them. It's only going to be those players on that team doing it.
Yeah.
If you do it for the horns down, it's got to be every team in the country's got to be able to do it whenever they score on Texas.
Look. All right.
I mean, that's just in defense of them because that's what's going to happen. It's every opponent.
Look.
Abusing, especially the SEC. They're going to abuse the hell out of it. They're going to spam it all game long on them. Like literally every time Texas plays somebody, they're just going to spam the horns down in their face nonstop. It's going to be hilarious.
I think the funniest thing about horns down is when it actually Steven.
That's what I was thinking.
Steven and Nick said it. It's just how random it becomes at times, because you'll be watching a West Virginia Kansas game and they're throwing horns down and you're like, where did he even come from? Like,
everybody love to do it, man.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
You're watching West Virginia versus Pitt or West Virginia versus Cal, and you're like, where did this even come from? Like
out of nowhere, every time, dog.
It's just that in the Army Navy game. That's weird.
Right, yeah, they throwing that. Like,
what are we doing?
And that's what I'm trying to say. EA,
that's
listen
crazy.
Listen to me. The horns down symbol, okay? Blood, sweat, and tears went into creating that. And then also, what you got to remember is this right here. The horns down symbol is synonymous with college football almost as much as the Washington State flag is with game day. Let's just be real. All right. It's everywhere. Stop hiding from it. Lean into it. Texas can't pay you enough money to not put that in the game. That's my spiel. All right, we'll start with.
I think Steven made a great point here. If anything, the only team that should be able to do it is OU. Make it part of the Red River.
That's
right.
Exactly.
That would be dope. That would make the most sense. That's when you should probably have it made, is because that's probably when it's the most impactful. It's a petty thing, and it totally makes sense for it to be so petty. But that's probably the time, if anybody should have it, should be Oklahoma. If you feel like you need to traverse it a little bit more, give it to A&M. Put it on the two rivals, and that's the only ones. But they're not going to be able to do it because they're going to have to think too much. Yeah, but Stubby asked a good question here about the Longhorn Network. Supposedly now it's free. It's part of the it's available. It's all available to everybody. So we can go watch Texas lose to UTSA or something.
Hey, man.
That's a good question. I don't know, just a few more minutes if you guys got time, but is it true that was part of the reason? Maybe that's the national narrative that's going around now, or maybe I'm just blind to it and I haven't heard it. But a lot of people say that's what initially broke up started the fall of the Big 12.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%. That was what. Yeah, Nebraska was not okay with it. Colorado was not okay with it. OU, it's,
we didn't care.
Yeah, and OU had their own in-house stuff at the time. They were working on, so it wasn't Longhorn Network, but
man, Fox Southwest Sports, boy, you had to be there, boy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You had to be there.
Yeah. So yeah, it 100%. They thought it would be a recruiting. Like now we look and say like social media, NIL had way more of an impact than the Longhorn Network ever did because Texas was just so awful during that stint that it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
But like they thought it would be a big recruiting disadvantage and the Big 12 was never as forward thinking to just go get a Big 12 network and make it fun for everybody. And because of that, you had teams that said, we're out. Texas A&M said, we're out. Missouri, no dice. And that's what happened.
Because Texas, at its brand with them in Oklahoma, we all know they were carrying the Big 12, right? That's the two brands, the largest brands right there. Just because Texas is just big and Oklahoma is an actual brand that's quality. So you got the massiveness of the brands, and Texas wanted to up the money for themselves, which, granted, Texas going independent like a BYU did or even a Notre Dame, they probably get a massive TV contract just because they've got millions of fans and a pretty big following or whatnot for whatever reason. So I that broke up everything, and now coming into the SEC, they're gonna fold it into the SEC network, and it's gonna be a part of everything else that's in the SEC network, right?
Yeah.
We've got the Sooner Vision and all of that stuff, so
they're just
gonna come back to normal.
I thought it was gonna go away, but yeah, I mean, I started hearing more and more conversations about it, and people were like, "Yeah, it's like Texas was daring enough to the point where they wanted to put high school recruits games on their network, and people were like, no, we're not. We could do a lot of stuff, but we ain't gonna do that, right? So yeah, I heard that and I said, wait a minute. I said maybe I was just tone deaf to that because I mean, I thought what you thought, Jay. What you said, it was never really a big deal because that was a decade of mediocrity. I mean, if we're just being quite honest.
We just wanted to play Nebraska at night. That's all.
Yeah.
Come on, Big 12. That's all we wanted.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Barry, go ahead and start. You guys just go ahead and plug your shows, plug everything. Jay, tell them about everything that you're doing now. So go ahead, guys. We'll go down the line. Barry.
Yeah, man. So for those who don't know, since I was on the last time I was on the show, this is actually the first time I've done another show since me and Damian became a part of the OUinsider brand. So go watch the Barry and Mack Show. It is a well-produced, high-quality, visually appealing, beautiful product.
Link in the bio.
Yeah, link in bio, baby. The Barry and Mack Show over there on OUinsider. Everybody knows that Parker and Brandon do a phenomenal job of just tracking down the recruiting news. Also, just a great staff of talent over there. Brian, Jesse, Blake, everybody. So phenomenal job. Follow me at BWise Fitness, at letter B WISE Fitness. You can see it back there. And then Damian, of course, who's obviously not here, but at DMac13, D_Mac13 on Twitter. And find him on X or on Instagram at Dame That Dude. And but man, most of all, just go tune in the Barry and Mack Show. It's on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you listen to podcasts. But go check out the video version on YouTube right now. As soon as you get done with this video, watch the whole thing through. Horns Down Podcast is awesome. But then go listen to the Barry and Mack Show. Really good stuff. And as always, Chris, man, thank you for having me on. It's fantastic stuff. Love to chat and chop it up with you guys. Really, really cool.
Absolutely. You know how to find me. Find me on Fair Sports here on the YouTubes, as well as wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. And as Chris kind of talked about at the beginning, I joined the Locked On Podcast Network, doing Locked On Sooners with my boy John Williams. You can catch us daily every morning. We do a daily show. So check that out here on the YouTube, as well as wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. Chris, as usual, thanks for having me. I'm glad I was able to. My internet acted up a little bit, but I'm back. It's been 2 days of no barely any power and no interwebs. It's been wild.
Gotta get you off of that Taco Bell internet, man.
Hey, man. Look, man, I get off that Spirit Airlines, man. It's been kicking my tail. Well, I probably shouldn't say that because if Spirit wants to send me money to sponsor the show, I will not.
Yeah, man.
Hey.
Yeah, man.
We'll take that here. Bring it over to the Orange Down Podcast. Go ahead, Spirit. Go ahead and throw them checks.
All right, y'all. So with that being said, like, subscribe. You already know the Horns Down Podcast. We in here.